Greetings and salutations, travelers of the internet, and welcome to the Lit Round Table. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Anna. We'll be your wise or not so wise mentors for today's audio adventure into all things storytelling. Welcome back.
Episode 19.
19. I'm very excited. We're officially in spooky season, and so today we are going to talk about Gothic literature, which I thought I knew stuff about, and I did not. I learned a lot.
I feel like that song's for use, right? That's like a funeral dirge.
I would think so. But I couldn't even tell you who the composer is.
Exactly.
So, your wife probably could tell us.
Could she? It's not really her forte. Anyway. The topic at hand.
Yes, we're going to talk about Gothic literature today, but before we do that, let's talk about what we're currently reading and watching. So I'll have you start, bud.
Oh, boy. Well, yesterday I finished the third book in Wheel of Time.
Dude, you are running through those. What's this one called? What's the third
Dragon
one called?
Reborn.
Okay.
And I think the fourth one is called Shadow Rising or something. I think that's the fourth one. So that's what my next Audible credit's going to be used for.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm still reading House in the Cerulean Sea. I'm like, am I over 100 pages through that? I don't know. I'm like a few chapters in. I read a little bit more of that a couple days ago. So that's been reading / listening. And then for watching, since we recorded last, the Star Wars Visions came out with all of the Star Wars anime, and I have seen like a little over half of those. I haven't seen them all yet, so I need to finish that. And also, there's a lot. There's a lot of things. I started watching Assassination Classroom, which is an anime on Funimation that is very good. It's like charming, but also has kind of dark moments and funny moments. It's really good. I really like it a lot. Let's see. I'm also I watched Midnight Mass on Netflix, it's like the same people that made Haunting at Hill House and Haunting at Bly Manor. It's not like the same. It's not like attached to those, but it's made by the same person and it has a lot of the same actors. So that's really good, I guess. It was like not so much scary. It was like a psychological thriller. I mean, it had horror moments, like it has horror themes, but it wasn't. It wasn't like Haunting at Hill House. Like it wasn't ghost related stuff. I'll say. But no, that was very well done, and the purpose of art is to make you feel things, and it succeeded. So good job.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's it. Hope and I both watched it, and it was like, whoa. So you should watch it, Anna, and then tell us what you think.
From another scaredy cat's perspective.
Right. Again, it's not like a ton of.
Is it
horror.
A movie or is it a show?
It is a series. I think it was 7 episodes.
Okay, so like short.
They're like an hour each, if not a little under an hour each. But yeah, so definitely watch that, especially because it's that time of year. It's the Spooktober.
Yes.
Let's see. There's other things I've watched too. It's just remembering. And games. I've been still playing Fallout 4. Yeah. There's like more things in watching, but I just can't remember them. So I forgot to write them down this time, so I know I'm forgetting things, but it's okay. Those are like the main things. We got a release date for Critical Role Campaign 3, when that's going to start. It's going to be like October 21st, I think it was.
Oh, it's coming up fast.
So I'm super pumped for that. Very excited
Cool.
to start watching that again. But I won't be able to binge it because it'll just be weekly again.
Right.
So, oh well, it's okay. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Cool.
How about you?
Well, So since we recorded the last episode, I was on a small vacation / quilting retreat, and so I was not in a place where I could watch a lot of TV or
Fair.
read a whole lot. So
Fair.
but what I have been watching, the Great British Baking Show has a new season that's airing right now on Netflix.
Oh,
so
that's good to know.
And they release episodes weekly. So they've had 3 episodes out. So I'm watching that, which I love. I'm also still watching She-Ra. I'm in the 2nd season. And I watched a Studio Ghibli movie called Tales from Earthsea, which I think is one of the older ones. And it's based on the novel by Ursula K. Le Guin.
I haven't heard of that one.
I think that's the author's name. Yeah, because it's not the same author as A Wrinkle in Time. I always get Ursula K. Le Guin and Madeleine L'Engle confused.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely it's definitely Ursula.
Sure.
Which I haven't read the book. I think our dad has read the book and has recommended it before. And after watching the movie, it's on my TBR list. So, but it was interesting. It was very different from like the normal Studio Ghibli movies.
Yeah.
So, and then for reading, I am reading The Hobbit right now, which I'm really excited about because I'm reading it with my middle schoolers.
Yeah.
And that's really fun.
You'll get to experience it for the first time.
Yes, and it's funny because I had our first meeting last week, and like I always ask, so what does everyone think so far? And the girl that had done the Chronicles of Narnia with me, I have one girl that moved over in to do The Hobbit, and the others did not, which is fine. I have 2 new students, but the one that had done Narnia was like, it's really different.
Yeah.
I was like, it really is, but it's so good. So reading through that again is a joy, as always. You always see something new, even though I've read it a million times. I'm also reading The Once and Future Witches, and I did not write the author's name down, and I don't have the book in front of me, so that will be in the description of the video and podcast. But it was I picked it up at Barnes & Noble as my October read because I wanted something Halloween-y.
Yeah.
So, not that it's Halloween-y at all, but it's obviously got witches in it, so kind of Halloween-y.
I mean, I feel like it counts.
Right. It's not like Halloween Town.
Right.
Or The Nightmare Before Christmas, but it's so far it's written really, like the prose is very beautiful and spooky, and I like it. And then I've also been reading some poetry because I know, it's been great to get back into poetry. I've been reading some Mary Oliver collections, her 1,000 Mornings collection and her Felicity collection. Both beautiful. Would highly recommend. Just good stuff.
Cool.
So, and it's been kind of fun to get back into the poetry game. I know we don't normally talk about like that kind of literature, but
it's fair.
Yeah. So
it's fair to include.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, that's really all the new stuff. Yeah.
Anna, tell me about Gothic literature. Tell me about Frankenstein's monster.
Okay, so here's the thing. I also thought that we were going to primarily be talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Stoker's Dracula. I have it written down.
Edgar Allan Poe. Is there at least going to be Edgar Allan Poe?
I thought we were going to talk about Poe. I thought we were going to talk about all these things that I've heard about before.
Are they not? Are they not a thing?
They don't actually exist. It's part of the what is that called? Berenstein Bears phenomenon.
Oh my gosh.
What is that called?
I don't know, but it's like something where like, oh, I step into the room and now it's Stein and now it's Steen. It's like
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe doesn't actually exist. It's just a shared memory that we've all been concocting and made up.
It's because we live in a simulation. Nothing's real.
Right. No. That's very October of us, I suppose.
Yeah.
But no. We will get to Edgar Allan Poe, but I thought that those are going to be like the bread and butter of our talk today. But it turns out that Gothic literature started like back in the mid 1700s. So well before
Oh.
Edgar Allan Poe and Shelley and all of that.
Shelley. Oh, Shelley.
Mary Shelley.
I know. It's just
That's
funny.
her name, right?
It's just funny. Oh, Shelley, you and your monster books.
Yeah.
When are you going to get a real job, Shelley?
I don't know why that's hitting my funny bones so like profoundly. So I learned a lot from our good friend Wikipedia about Gothic literature today while I was preparing for our podcast. So this is just a blanket statement that this is very rudimentary research because it wasn't what I expected to find.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah, so the conventions of Gothic literature weren't invented until this 18th century, and like the first novel or story was written by Horace Walpole, and it was called The Castle of Otranto.
Ooh.
Otranto.
Sounds Italian.
With a name like Horace Walpole, I think not.
Well, I don't know. Poe wrote Cask of Amontillado or whatever. It's just...
Yeah, but he's American. Americans do crap like that all the time.
Americans appropriate other cultures all the time. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
That wasn't quite what I meant, but
This
yeah.
is America. Anyway, continue.
No, I mean, so Gothic literature started in, it's British.
Sure.
But we'll get into that a little
Do you
more.
know, did you read at all what the first one was actually about?
Well, so from this one, we get a lot of the common tropes. So we're going to talk about some of those tropes
sweet.
that come up.
Love it.
I don't have like the
plot?
plot
Okay.
or any of that, but
There's a castle, I'm assuming.
yes. So one of the features of Gothic literature is a medieval setting. Which when I read that, I was like, oh, I wouldn't have guessed that because like when I think of Frankenstein, I guess there's kind of a castle element, but I don't immediately think that. Or when I think of Jekyll and Hyde, I don't think of castles at all because it's set in London, but not like during the medieval time period.
I always think of it more of like a Victorian era, like Jack the Ripper kind of, you know?
Like Penny Dreadfuls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, but that comes later.
Okay.
Yeah, the medieval setting is pretty important in original Gothic literature.
Okay.
There's also like mysterious imagination, which is just like the concept that there's more than what we can see.
Okay.
Which makes sense when you think about like the religious setting of the time and how the world is being like discovered in the late 1700s or 1700s, and like the edges of the map are being filled in, and there were no dragons. Like there were none of these mythological things that people were expecting to find. It was just more of the same.
Yeah. I mean, buffalo are pretty crazy, but
yes, it's true. But trying to think of what other like American creature would have been scary, but I think buffalo is like maybe elk would have been a little startling.
The first time someone saw a huge moose running through the forest. Hey man.
Or heard one, super disturbing.
If I saw a giant moose running around, I would have, I'd have prayed.
Yeah.
I would have prayed.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Get back, demon.
Yeah. So part of the like mysterious imagination concept also relies heavily on the suspension of disbelief. So like the audience being willing to like give in to the wonder and terror of the story that was being told.
Grizzly bears.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Although, I mean, bears are around other places.
But grizzly bears
Not
are extra
grizzly
scary.
bears. But
Polar bears.
we're also, I mean, are these things found on the East Coast, because I feel like the things we're talking about are pretty like
These are like
standard for the Midwest.
these are like Lewis and Clark things that we're
right.
that we're naming right now.
Like the conquistadors were not finding
Yeah.
grizzly bears and elk.
Uh-huh.
I don't think. I could be wrong. But yeah. Let's see. These stories are also usually played very straight. Like even though there's a very like melodramatic element to it, like it was very serious business. These Gothic stories.
Not many comic relief characters in these stories.
At least not early on.
Yeah.
I would say later.
That's
like
fair.
that probably became more prevalent. There's also a lot of discussion about, and you probably would have guessed this, but around death and decay and like the macabre. Although that was not something that was new, that had been around before Gothic literature. Like what was it called? Like the death poets. Like there were several things. I could be remembering that wrong, but there were several things before Goth lit that I probably should abbreviate it that way. Gothic literature that explored like death and dying.
Yeah.
So like that wasn't new, but it was a staple in Gothic literature.
I'm trying to remember like the dates from when we did our Shakespeare one. Where does like Shakespeare line up with the timeline when he was doing like his tragic comedies and stuff, and like because he's got really dark stuff. Was that like 1700s too when Shakespeare was doing stuff? I don't remember.
Why don't you look that up real quick?
I'm the one that led that one, so I should.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta like move stuff around.
I mean, Shakespeare was not mentioned at all in the Wikipedia article.
Fair.
But I think that's a fair question because when you think about Hamlet and like,
I feel like there's still like Gothic themes, like of the death and decay and stuff.
for sure. I would say that like the last and probably most critical element of Gothic literature, while you look that up, is the emotional aesthetic. That's very important. And I don't know that Shakespeare necessarily hits the emotional aesthetic.
He came before.
Okay.
He was
1600s?
But yeah, between 1590 and 1613. Okay. So he was a little bit before the Gothic, at least when the Gothic stuff started, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a good like 150 years earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the sources that was going to be a poorly constructed sentence. When we're talking about
one of the sources.
When we're talking about emotional aesthetic, Edmund Burke wrote, this is a very long title. He wrote A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful in 1757.
Good grief.
What I believe is a book, but it seems more like an article title.
The title was a book.
Yes. But this, whether it was a book or an essay, I don't know, talked about how the sublime, terror, and obscurity all played a role in this emotional aesthetic in Gothic literature. So the unknown and like the obscurity of the unknown is terrifying, and that terror creates the sublime, which he defines as being like the strongest emotion you can feel.
Are we going to get into H.P. Lovecraft today?
Oh, no, he wasn't on the thing. Because we'll get into this. Let me turn my page here. I have 3 pages of notes.
I know the feeling.
Because when we get into Mary Shelley, we'll talk about the dawn of sci-fi, and I believe H.P. Lovecraft falls more into the sci-fi bracket than Gothic lit.
Interesting.
Or horror, which is not the same thing as Gothic lit.
Yeah. Wikipedia says writer of weird science, fantasy, and horror fiction. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yep.
He was he was born late 1800s, so okay.
Yep. Look, I mean, we're gonna cover a wide range of time here.
Yeah.
much wider than I expected.
The only reason I ask is because that whole fear of the unknown is something that he touches on a lot in like a lot of his like the Lovecraftian horror. You know, it's like this unknown creature from like beyond space and time that no one's ever encountered before, and there's like tentacles and like Cthulhu stuff. Anyway, sorry, don't want to derail you.
No, you're good. And then like one of the last things that's like a staple in Gothic literature is that politics influence the villains, which sounds about right. Like that sounds like something that happens all the time in literature now. So like some of these themes we'll see have like stuck around for a long time, and with good reason probably. So Horace Walpole, already mentioned his name, one of like the earliest writers of Gothic literature. He was notorious for like the threatening mystery. There's like lots of hidden passageways. Think like Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
But serious, not like not making fun of it. I would say that Scooby-Doo is a good parody of Gothic literature.
Interesting take. I like it.
Well,
I like it.
Yeah.
I want that in quotes. On it.
Okay, we'll put on a t-shirt.
On a shirt.
When we have merch someday, Scooby-Doo is Gothic literature parody.
Scooby-Doo is a great parody of Gothic literature. Which make people who are all the Scooby-Doo fans sound way more sophisticated than they are. Well, no, okay, I'm not going to insult your sophisticatedness, but
I am not like a Scooby-Doo fan, but I do not want to incur the wrath
the Scooby-Doo,
Scooby-Doo fandom.
Yeah. Ruh-roh.
So Horace Walpole was an important writer, and so was Anne Radcliffe. There are several like staples or like important people that were writing, but I recognize Anne Radcliffe's name. And she was the one that created the brooding Gothic villain, which would later become a trope adapted to the Byronic hero, which we'll circle back to that too. I don't know if you're familiar with Lord Byron or like
that name is incredibly familiar.
It should be. He's a super well-known author, wrote a lot of poetry, was very brooding, part of the Romance era.
I know he came up in English class. He had to have. Like his name is
100%.
I could not name you a single thing that he did, but his name is definitely striking a chord. Like that name, I have definitely heard that name.
You've probably heard it also in conjunction with the Byronic hero, which is like the brooding, like hero.
Anti-hero?
Think Edward Cullen. No. Think Heathcliff from
Self-Loathing,
Withering Heights, and Edward Cullen from Twilight. Like that kind of hero. Is a Byronic hero. So she, was kind of the founder of that movement. Although her version of it was a villain and not a hero. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
How we change things.
Fair.
So it's also important to note that there were similar things happening in other countries that were incredibly related to Gothic literature. Mm-hmm. But obviously those names were not as familiar to me because I do not speak Russian, French, or much German.
Right.
So not enough German to claim it as a language.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the earliest parodies of Gothic literature, which became pretty popular, was actually none other than Jane Austen, which I should have totally seen coming because specifically her Northanger Abbey.
I don't know anything about that one.
Yeah, so I've read it. It's one of her, like, the first books that she finished writing, but it wasn't published until after she died.
Okay. What?
So...
She wrote Gothic lit? Wow.
No. It's not Gothic literature. It's a parody of it because the main character in that story is obsessed with Gothic literature. Reads it all the time. She cannot separate. Like, she's like... Catherine is like the character that cannot tell if something is real or if it's something that she read.
That is so meta.
And so she, yes.
That is amazing.
It's great. And so she also, like, this was kind of an interesting thing in the Wikipedia article, but she includes like a list of titles that everyone just assumed was like something she made up. Like she just made up the names of these books for the sake of her book, but they're actual like stories that were written and published. And so they're like being recovered and reprinted apparently.
That's hilarious.
So,
wow.
yeah. Yeah. So
funny. It's too funny.
I thought I was like, I'm so glad I get to work in some Jane Austen into this discussion about Gothic literature.
If there was a way to do it, you would have found it. You would have found a way to do it.
Yes. But it was there waiting for me on a silver platter. Which that leads us to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is clearly influenced by Gothic literature, but is actually considered to be the first science fiction novel.
Yeah. Because that one is less like medieval setting and more like evil laboratory doctor guy, you know?
Yeah. But totally addressing the same questions of like death and decay and like what do we do for love? And so you can see how science fiction was developed out of Gothic literature, which is pretty cool.
And Lovecraft kind of probably followed after that.
Yes.
Down that vein.
Yep.
It's like an offshoot of Gothic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. As I was going through this, I was like, wow, a lot of stuff came out of Gothic literature. Which just makes sense, because that's how...
I remembered. Okay, we were just mentioning sci-fi. Another movie I watched was Alien 3. Anyway. I forgot.
Yeah. I wish, dear listener, I wish that you could have seen what just happened. Because I was looking down at my notes to move on to the next point, and I look up, and Josef is like gesticulating wildly because he just remembered something, and it was Alien 3.
I like flailed my hand. I was like,
and like shook your head.
Wow! Wait, stop everything. I watched Alien 3.
Great.
Sorry. I didn't get a good sleep last night. I'm like really like, I don't know. I'm in a weird place right now. We're talking about
good.
Frankenstein.
I know.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's great. Alien 3. Love it. Was it good?
I mean, it wasn't as good as the first two. But, I mean,
Okay.
it was still sci-fi. And
Okay.
still...
Yeah, totally related.
Yeah.
Name a gothic trope that appeared in Alien 3.
I mean, hey, actually, the self-loathing thing, the bionicle hero.
Ironic. No, Byronic. Bionic. Oh my gosh. My mic has so many spikes from me laughing. I'm sorry.
No, the Byronic hero, that's a thing in Alien 3. If you've seen Alien, the self-loathing, because it takes place on a planet where, like, they're prisoners, and there's, like, the doctor guy is, like, there for a reason, and he hates himself for it, and it's like a thing. Like, he, you know, so there's a lot of self-loathing
Love it.
in Alien 3. And a fear of the unknown, because none of these prisoners know what the alien is, you know? Everyone's dying left and right. So, yeah.
Is Alien the first one when, like, the creature comes out of her belly?
Yes.
Okay. I have seen that.
It's when an alien bursts out of their
okay.
midsection and screeches. I feel like we watched that a couple of years ago with you.
We did.
Yeah.
We totally did.
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember if that was Alien or if it was something else.
Second one is really good too, just so you know. You should watch Aliens sometime, because that's the sequel. It's Alien, Aliens, and then Alien 3, because that makes sense. Anyway.
This has taken a wild turn that I was not expecting.
It's fine. We're only a half an hour in. We have so much time to continue our discussion.
Good. It's good. Now back to your regularly scheduled topic.
Hey, sci-fi is relevant.
It is. Yeah, so around the same time as, like, the Mary Shelley stuff, We have the mid 1800s, which is also the Victorian era, which is when we get into like the penny dreadfuls, which were like a serialized form of storytelling. I think like I'm trying to think of a modern
Like
example.
Boxcar Kids, only
Kind
scary.
of. Yeah, and maybe shorter.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that. And vampire fiction is becoming popular at this time. And across the ocean, Edgar Allan Poe is a well-known reinterpreter of the Gothic literature for Americans. So, but the interesting thing about Edgar Allan Poe is that he was more into the psychological side of things and like
Oh, yeah.
characters' descent into madness, which was not necessarily that prevalent in like British literature.
I mean,
that was Gothic.
he was someone who, I mean, is it pretty safe to say he had a bit of a disturbed mind?
I think it is very safe to say that Edgar Allan Poe had some kind of mental illness.
Okay, thank you for
Yes.
not throwing me under the bus and being like, oh, some authors can just, write things and not be mentally ill. But I'm like, dude, he was
okay.
pretty mentally ill.
I think that a lot of authors, at least now, would, and I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I think that a lot of us would be like, yeah, no, mental illness is like a thing.
And writing is how some people cope.
Yeah. But I think that's true of a lot of creatives.
Yeah. But
Because that wrestling with like art and creation and life and all of that
right.
it can feel very tenuous and but important. And that's confusing.
Yeah. Van Gogh.
In the brain. Yeah. Yeah.
What my point being, I'm not surprised given that he is someone who we're agreeing was likely had some kind of mental illness. Like he chose to explore like the mental side of these spooky stories, and like the one that stands out to me is that the person who they're like sitting in a chair and they hear a heartbeat coming from under the floorboards, because
the Telltale Heart.
Yeah, he wrote that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the first. It's probably one of the first pieces of Edgar Allan Poe that most kids in America are introduced to.
Yeah. That one is very psychological. Like The Raven, like a lot of them are very. It's like it's less about being afraid of like the actual death part, although that's like a significant aspect of it. But it's like he just really nails the dread leading up to it. Like a cask of Amontillado or whatever. I think that's what it's called.
I think so.
The one where like the guy gets bricked into like a enclosed space, basically gets buried alive. Yeah, it's freaky. It's freaky stuff.
Yeah. I think. How do I want to say this? I mean, the other thing with Edgar Allan Poe is that he also had a very, like, troubled life. Like, he experienced a lot of, like, personal trauma as a young person leading into him becoming a writer. And so I would say that I'm not, like, when you consider his life, it's not shocking, like, the things that he was coming up with as a writer. Just like Sylvia Plath, like, her poetry is very depressing, but her life was like that. So it made sense. And I think that whenever someone's trying to create art out of their life experience, you'll get tastes of what that life was like. So. Yeah. Same with Stephen King. I mean, if you read his On Writing, he talks a lot about how his childhood was really hard. Not like it, but
there's
like
pretty messed up stuff in that one.
For sure, he's someone. He definitely like. They all elevate that, right? But you draw from that like emotion into creating something else. So.
I haven't really read up on much of Stephen King's backstory at all. Did he grow up in the American Northeast in like the that makes sense. It's like where all of his stories take place is in like.
Yeah, I think he's in Maine.
I was gonna
I
say
could be
it's
wrong.
like a small fishing village in Maine. There's
Yeah.
like so many like. Let's go get a lobster roll. Like that's like
Yeah.
all they eat
Yeah.
in Stephen King horror novels. Fish,
That's funny.
seafood, and it's gray. It's always gray outside.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway,
But yeah, so anyway, going back to Poe and him being like invested in the psychological descent into madness, I think that totally tracks with his person.
his personal psyche.
Yes. Yes. I think it's probably a self-exploration
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Not to be depressing on the podcast.
I mean,
It's October.
Poe was obviously depressed.
For sure. For sure. So like as I was reading through this, I was like, oh, I kept thinking of these books that I had read that I was like, I hadn't really thought of them as being influenced by Gothic literature. But yeah, I totally like I wonder if there's papers written on that. And then like as I was reading, they all came up.
Nice.
So
Love it.
so some honorable mentions. We have Withering Heights by Emily Bronte, which you may have read in high school. I know I did.
I did not.
What a shame. It's a good one. I guess I
Sorry.
read it in AP Lit, so it was like the college course, but did you take AP Lit?
Nope. Well, here's the thing. I was signed up to take AP Lit. I was not going to get your teacher. Your teacher retired.
I know, which is a shame because he was lovely.
It was her first year taking it over. And I was signed up for it. And we had summer reading that we had to do. And
Yeah,
I
that
was not
my
about
teacher
that.
too. Oh, was it just a separate piece though? Because it's like the world's shortest novel. You can read it in a day. You probably read it in an hour.
Which one is that? Is it like
A separate piece?
Is it about people at like an all boys school?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one. I think I read it, but I think it was like reading reading through her syllabus and everything was really intimidating. Like not just that. It was and then I think I made the right call because a lot of people that took it that are normally like really really smart like really really high grade point averages, like that class just like destroyed a lot of people's GPAs because apparently she did not believe in giving out A's because there's always room for improvement. She was one of those teachers. So
I will definitely say that my AP Lit teacher was fantastic and not like that.
Yeah.
He was he is still alive, a lovely human being.
yeah, people didn't really
And if I
like
could take classes from him still, I would.
people didn't like the new lady.
Interesting. If you had taken that class, you would have read Withering Heights by Emily Bronte, or Bronte, which she wrote. Like Withering Heights is considered a female Gothic novel, which I didn't know, because it features Heathcliff, who's the Byronic hero that we mentioned earlier. He's also described as demonic. He's kind of crazy.
Oh.
You should read Withering Heights as an adult. I should read it again as an adult. I think I will get more out of it now. But it like explores women, like the female, I don't want to say female. It explores women's entrapment with domestic spaces and the patriarchy and women trying to escape that oppression.
Was there a movie for this?
Oh, for sure.
With O'Hara, what's her name? Scarlett O'Hara, is that her name?
That I don't know. Perhaps.
Is this the Frankly My Dear I Don't Give a Damn?
No,
What's
that's
that?
Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought those were the same or affiliated in any way. Maybe it's because one of them has they both have
old.
W's.
Yeah, I mean they're both old.
Yeah.
Like old media that you haven't seen that feature like strong women. So I don't think it's that crazy that you got them confused.
And there's like a lot of like domestic disputes in Gone with the Wind.
Oh, for sure.
So when
yes.
you were talking about female or women like dealing
Trying
with
to escape.
domesticity, I was like, oh, is it that? Okay, so
No, totally fair.
anyway.
Totally fair where you made that connection, but no.
But I went to film school, so I should have known that. It's okay.
Yeah, but you still didn't see it.
I have not seen it. So
Which
it's fine.
also I would not necessarily recommend it. It was a huge bummer. Like I watched that movie thinking like I'm gonna love this, and then I watched it and was like I watched it on Valentine's Day. Those of you
wow.
that have seen Gone with the
You
Wind,
idiot.
I watched it on Valentine's Day like as a gift to myself because I was like I'm gonna celebrate Valentine's Day as a single person and watch Gone with the Wind, and it was awful. It was awful.
Wow.
Would never do it
Why
again.
do you hate yourself?
I didn't know. I thought it was like gonna be a really lovely romance story,
honey.
and it's not at all. It's depressing and awful and
Oh, honey.
about a super unhealthy, abusive on both sides relationship. Like, just not good.
So it was like, yeah, maybe I'll stay single a little longer.
Which I did. so far.
And you're still rocking it. You're
Yeah.
still going strong.
Oh gosh.
It was because
Okay.
of that. That's the reason.
Yes,
It's
no,
'cause of
for
Gone
sure.
with the
It
Wind.
has nothing to do with living in the middle of Nebraska and only interacting with married people.
I have no prospects.
and no connections.
I'm already burdened to my parents.
I'm 27 years old. 30 years old.
You don't live with mom and dad, though, so
I don't. Winning.
you don't get to use that line anymore.
Oh, man.
Anyway, I might cut a lot of this out, but anyway, back to...
I think it's funny, though. You leave as much of it in as you want.
Okay,
I don't
okay,
care.
okay. Anyway, back to Gothic literature.
Yes,
I'm hungry. I
yes.
haven't eaten
Okay,
dinner
so...
yet.
So, in the same vein as Withering Heights, we also have Jane Eyre, which was written by Charlotte Bronte, who's Emily Bronte's sister.
Jane Eyre. I haven't heard of that one.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't believe that. Because I wrote like a paper about it. I can't believe you never. But I was also that was my senior year of high school, so maybe I didn't talk to you about
Jane
it.
Eyre.
Jane Eyre. Oh,
What's like?
okay.
It's Gothic lit, but
Well, it's
Or is it kind of derivative?
Victorian
Oh, okay.
and derivative.
but it's
It's another female Gothic novel.
so it's like the Penny Dreadful kind of. That's the
No. It's the
the Withering
women
Heights.
exploring.
Withering
Yeah.
Heights. Okay,
It's more inviting. Yeah.
Isn't Penny Dreadful have like a female lead?
Penny Dreadful is a TV show that does have a female lead, and it uses stories that you would have found in Penny Dreadfuls.
Oh, okay.
Penny Dreadful is not an actual name. A Penny Dreadful, it's a serialized story that you would have bought for a penny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although that's a great female character name for a Gothic literature.
Oh, for sure.
First,
for sure.
First
And
name
it-
Penny, last name Dreadful. Penny Dreadful.
Yes, and kudos to that TV writer that came up with that concept. Like, I hope they've won some awards. I've never watched the show,
Me neither.
but like the concept of it, spot on.
I've heard the theme song. It's cool.
Yeah, it's one that's it's like on my list of things I want to watch, and then but I have to be in a very specific mood for spooky.
Has to be October.
Yes, for me, yes.
It has to be chilly season.
Yes,
Like the food and not the weather.
yeah.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand.
Little bite in the air. Yeah. Some other familiar names would be Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women. Not that Little Women is considered like female Gothic.
Yeah.
But she wrote other stories. And
deal with-
then
they deal with
Elizabeth
death.
Gaskell. Yeah, I still wouldn't say that Little Women is Gothic at all.
Yeah.
Charles Dickens was also influenced by Gothic literature, specifically like Oliver Twist and what was the other one?
Christmas Carol.
Well, the Christmas Carol was on the list, but I want to make an argument that yes, because the Ghosts of Christmas Past. What's the really, really scary one? Is that
Christmas
Past?
Future is the scary one.
Blech. Blech.
Like the Grim.
Hate Christmas Future.
The Grim Reaper looking dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hate it.
That's
so
the Christmas
much.
yet to come. Yeah.
Very Gothic. Very
Oh
Gothic.
yeah, I mean they're
in
like
nature.
there's like cemeteries and like tombstones
Oh,
with
yeah.
the big crosses and like the like
And specifically talking about the unknown.
spiky
and, like,
metal fences.
Yes, and like answering the question of what if, like so Gothic.
Marvel's What If. I watched that also.
Dude, what is happening? What is happening? You know what my type for this, like what I'm going to write in the description of this episode is, we try to talk about Gothic literature, but Joseph remembers what he watched last week.
Oh, no. Oh, I need to watch the series. I need to watch the season finale because it's out now, and I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, dude. Okay.
You should totally watch it. It's great.
Okay,
Anyway,
I will. It's on my list.
Wow.
Okay, so other familiar names. We've got the Russian writer Dostoyevsky. Was also
heard
influenced
of him.
by... Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, gosh. And then in the late 1800s, we had Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote
Treasure Island.
The Strange Case. He wrote Treasure Island, but he also wrote The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh,
did you know that?
I knew that. I did, because when I was doing the pirate research, that came up. And I was like, oh, I didn't know he wrote both of those. So that's interesting.
Very different stories.
Very different.
But yes, so like I expected that we would talk a lot about Jekyll and Hyde, but it's like the very end of the discussion.
It's like afterthought.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, which I haven't read, so I don't know exactly how that is influenced by Gothic.
I can't say that I've heard of it.
But I'm guessing... I'm not going to make a guess. It was on the list on Wikipedia. But it's on my list of things to read, so once I've read it, I'll report back.
Okay.
And then we've got Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I also... Like, the things that I expected to spend the bulk of our time talking about were more derivative of the true Gothic literature than, like, actual Gothic literature. Also on the list was The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux.
I forget that was like a book.
Yeah,
You know?
and so when it came up on the list, I was like, oh yeah, so Gothic.
Oh,
Set in the
yeah.
opera house,
Self-loathing.
with like, the tunnels underground, self-loathing
Villain.
anti-hero.
Yeah.
Villain,
No,
yeah.
he's... Please.
For sure the villain. Well, okay.
I get the
So
people like Phantom.
here's my weird thing about the Phantom of the Opera. I do not like it. You like it. I like the music, but the story creeps me out because it's so...
Yeah.
Because Christina is so in love with the Phantom, and he just gives off really strong, dangerous sexual predator vibes for me.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm super disturbed by him the entire time. And she's so in love. And I just am like, this is wrong. I hate this. I hate this so much. Which totally makes sense. It's very Gothic that way.
And I mean, you see at least in the movie, and I'm assuming in the play too. I don't know if it's in the book, but he, like, when he's singing and she can, like, see him through her mirror, it's like, my girl, he can see you changing through this two-way mirror.
Yeah.
He's a creep. He's voyeuristic and manipulative and way too old for you.
Oh, for sure.
No, he's a predator. But
yes.
The dude's got some pipes.
Yes.
And it's still an entertaining movie and an entertaining... If you can... I think the Broadway version is on Netflix, and it's even better than the movie, some would say. So,
yeah, no, I mean, the music in Phantom is amazing. The story creeps me out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which, I mean, everything that we just said really gives it strong Gothic lit points.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, getting into more modern things, Gothic lit had a profound influence on modernism in literature, which totally makes sense when you think about like modernism and the theater of the absurd. And
can you briefly, for the audience, not for me, explain what you mean by modernism?
By modernism, I mean the specific time period in literature that James Joyce was a part of, Virginia Woolf. So James Joyce wrote Ulysses, which is like stream of consciousness. So he kind of falls into this Gothic modern lit that has Gothic themes, because his whole question is like trying to answer what is the purpose of the universe.
Oh, okay.
Which that's kind of what like modern lit is as a whole, is trying to answer that question of what is purpose. Which is why it's really polarizing, because then you get into the discussion of authorial intent versus reader interpretation and what's more valuable.
Sounds
And
very
what's
like
the point?
existential.
Yes.
I don't like
Which
it.
is what but that's what Gothic literature did, though, right?
Oh, you're right. Like
It's
the fear
like,
of the unknown
yeah.
and like all that stuff.
Yeah, and like trying to answer that existential dread,
Mm-hmm.
which is very modern when you're talking about modern lit.
Sure.
Not modern
you.
as
I
in
got you.
contemporary to us. Yeah, so Gothic lit had a big influence on modernism, and then there's also Southern Gothic, which I'm not even going to get into, but that's like Southern U.S.
That's like-
you can take on Southern Gothic
That's
sometime
like
if you
Abraham
want.
Lincoln Vampire Slayer. That's Southern Gothic.
No, but yes. And then there's contemporary Gothic, so like our current present time contemporary, which is like Neil Gaiman. So think like The Sandman.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's a very
And-
familiar name too.
Oh yeah, he wrote Stardust. He wrote.
You're way better at like author names than me.
I'm trying to think of things that you know. Oh, he's one of the writers on Good Omens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett.
Oh, okay.
Good Omens, written by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Okay. Also, Stephen King is on that list of sometimes contemporary Gothic. He's definitely more in the horror genre, but sometimes he is Gothic-ish in nature.
He dabbles.
But here's the real bomb. Here's the last one. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
Do you want to guess? Do you want to guess who I'm going to say?
Of an author.
I've given hints. Mm-hmm.
You've given hints.
Oh yeah.
Is it someone that I know?
Personally, no.
No.
But have you read her? Yes.
Oh, her? Crap.
Mm-hmm.
Does she still write?
I don't believe she. Yes, she did have something come out last year.
J.K. Rowling?
No.
Okay, who is it? I don't know.
Stephanie Meyer.
Oh!
Twilight is technically considered contemporary Gothic literature.
I thought of her earlier in this episode, and I totally, it left my brain. Yeah,
because
I'm
I
not
mentioned
shocked.
Edward Cullen.
I'm
earlier.
not surprised.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense though, right? Like, I read that at the very end of the Wikipedia article and was like, oh my gosh. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
But vampires?
Yeah. Self-loathing.
There's the mystery of the unknown.
I wish I wasn't a
for
vampire.
sure self-loathing.
Yeah.
But like the vampires are real, werewolves are real.
The Volturi, like the Italian vampires that are like all weird and there's like some weird medieval stuff when they go to Italy, you know? Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, it was a fun ride to see like the like full journey of Gothic literature.
Well, I don't think we're quite at the end. We haven't. So by extension, that means 50 Shades of Grey is also.
No.
But it's Twilight
believe
fanfic.
so.
It's Twilight fanfic become real. That's.
I have not read it. I have no idea, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it strongly follows romance tropes and not Gothic literature tropes.
But at the same time, you don't know. So.
You're right, but neither do you.
How do you know? I don't know. You don't know me.
Because I know you. I do know you. And I know that you have not read it.
No, I don't have time for that. I have more Wheel of Time.
Well,
to
no,
read.
I was gonna say you've been busting through Wheel of Time, so there's no way.
There's like 13 books in that series. I gotta hustle. The show's coming out now.
Oh, it is. Oh, you know what else is coming out? Dune. So I bought Dune on audio.
Oh, that's a good. I have the book.
Listen to it.
That's one where I'm gonna have to watch the movie and then read the book because it's so dry in the beginning.
I'm gonna have to listen to it. Someone recently told me that it's much easier to listen to.
There's some trippy names in that one, so
yes,
that also kind of made it hard for me.
Yes. So if you decide to go to Audible to find Dune, Joseph and listener, when you go to Audible to find Dune, it is a little confusing because Dune, which is the first book that was published by Frank Herbert, is technically not the first book in the series.
Pardon?
When you look on Audible. Because there were books published later on, as far as like a chronological time frame for us. It kind of pulled a Star Wars,
Oh,
where they're set before, and so they're considered like book 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then Dune happens. I think Dune is like book 13
what?
or something
Bro,
ridiculous.
Okay.
I think. So when you go to Audible and you look up Dune and it says book 13 or whatever it says, do not be dismayed. Because that is in fact the first book.
Okay.
But it's not.
I think
I had to look it up because I was very confused.
so.
I had to Google it.
The right thing to do is you just Google proper reading order of the Dune franchise, and I'm sure someone has compiled a list of.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about Dune is that it has kind of a similar thing happening to it that happened to Wheel of Time, where Frank Herbert died.
Did someone else
and
pick it up at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
So I believe it's his son.
Okay.
And Kevin J. Anderson have been working on from Frank Herbert's notes to finish the series.
Oh, that's cool.
Which Kevin J. Anderson may be a familiar name to those of you that read Star Wars novels because he has written a fair number of Star Wars novelizations. And he's also a professor at my alma mater for grad school.
Would you look
He
at
wasn't
that?
there when I was there, which is annoying.
Dang it! Dang it!
But I still have like connections with him, and I it's like the what is that called? Like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, or what is that called?
I have no idea what you're talking
7
about.
degrees from Kevin Bacon. Like, you never heard of that?
No.
Like, there's only 7 people between you and Kevin Bacon.
Oh, okay. The concept checks out. I have never heard
Yes.
that saying,
Oh,
but it
okay.
makes sense. I understand.
Yes. So I'm like, oh, I'm only like 1 degree away from Kevin J. Anderson, which is very cool. We're in a Facebook group together.
Wow.
I could technically like add him in that Facebook group. Heck, I could technically email him from
Maybe he'd respond.
my alma mater. Maybe.
Be like, hey, can you read my book?
No. I would never do that. No. But anyway.
So what I'm hearing is potential first podcast guest.
Oh, well, I don't want to say never, but probably never.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. Maybe someday.
It would be cool. Maybe when I'm published someday and
Yeah.
have a little more clout to my own name.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
What a deviation from our original topic.
Yep. So anyway,
I'm excited to see Dune though.
back to the subject at hand. 50 Shades of Grey. No, Gothic literature. Yeah. I like where it went, even though it wasn't expected. Where
Yes.
the directions that we would go with
Right.
that one.
Yeah, I mean, I would highly suggest if you're looking for something this October to read that's kind of like in the vein of spooky but isn't like terrifying. Like it's not horror. It's just like
If you want to just be kind of bummed.
not even fun. Like Jekyll and Hyde is a really interesting look at the human condition
Right.
and like the nature of man. And I mean, Dracula's kind of scary.
Slightly disturbed. But also, we should say
Edgar Allan Poe can be kind of scary.
some of these, like, I've read Dracula, or at least parts of it, and it's like there are parts of it that are definitely scary, but it's like not the same as like Stephen King scary. Like I think modern horror is like a totally different tier. Like they've
Yes.
honed and perfected the horror aspect, and
sure.
Dracula. It may have inspired some things in modern horror, but it's like modern horror has perfected it. So
Yeah, for sure.
you won't get like scared out of your pants by Dracula.
Right. So if you're wanting something like kind of spooky but not downright scary, keep you up at night,
Right.
I would suggest looking into any of the titles that were mentioned in reference to Gothic literature.
Yeah. And speaking of reading, if you missed it last time, we've chosen what the next book is for the
Yes.
for the read along, which is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which is a grimdark fantasy series, or the first book in a grimdark fantasy series. So,
yeah. You know what's funny is when I was in Barnes & Noble picking up my witches book and my poetry books, the blade itself was like on an end cap being displayed, which made me laugh.
Because it's October. Like, it's October and it's a grimdark fantasy series.
Yeah.
Yep.
But what I was going to say is, ironically enough, I believe the first episode of The Blade itself will actually drop the first week of October, or of November.
Wait, what? Is it being made into a show?
No. Our episode.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like a TV show. I was like, wait, what? Did I miss that? Is that being...
Are you kidding? No. Do you think I would have let you go this long without knowing that they were making a TV show? That would have come up like 20 minutes ago in the middle of the podcast with everything else.
So we'll get into like the Christmas season with The Blade itself, but that's okay.
Yeah, which is fine. Also, so when we were like talking about it, you were like having some kind of issue about like how we were going to split it up because of the chapters.
Oh, because there's no table of contents.
There's no table of contents. So when I got the book, I was like, oh, this will be fine. And I opened it up. The chapters aren't numbered. They're only named. That is annoying when it comes to me creating a schedule for us.
So we're going to have to go page numbers.
But that's hard because not every book is the same. Unless you know what I mean? Like if you have a different print, like a different edition. So it'll be a...
That sounds like an Anna problem.
It is. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to figure it out. Alrighty. Don't you worry.
Sounds good. Well, I'm excited.
I have technically divided it up.
Oh,
it's all nice. You can't see this, listener, but Joseph can see
That's
it.
The
it's
same
divided.
Exact copy that I have.
Yeah, so we could do page numbers, but that would not be helpful to anyone that's reading along with us.
So I can ask you for page numbers when I'm like, hey, what's next?
Yes.
Anyway.
You can.
Alrighty.
Anyway.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think? Is that have we covered enough ground? Do you think we're good?
I think so. I'm out of notes.
Oh.
So I think we've done good.
Sounds good.
I closed my notebook.
Awesome. Well, in that case, thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Have fun with this spooky season, Spooktober. Go read something spooky.
And we'll talk at you next time.
Bye.
Bye.